Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm an author and publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we work with authors of all types and genres. So whether you have a book in your head or in your heart, or maybe even 300 sheets of loose leaf shoved in a drawer. And yes, this year alone, we have accepted 3 books that were completely handwritten. Just visit redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I'm so excited to be joined today by 3 authors who have totally unleashed themselves, and you will be so inspired by their work and their writing. Marci Quinn wrote A Teen's Spirit, Changing the World Through Love and Kindness. And goodness knows, we'd love to hear a little more about changing the world through love and kindness. On a completely different note, Mel Greenberg wrote Running with Our Eyes Closed. Woof, you're going to hear some hot stuff going on there about relationships and maybe make you reflect on your own a little bit. And then finally, Genesis Amaris Kemp is going to talk to us about chocolate drop in corporate America, something we definitely all want to be awakened to and hear a lot more about. So first, let's welcome Marci Quinn, author of A Teen's Spirit. Marci, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I'm delighted to have you, and you and I are practically neighbors. You're hailing here from Long Island.
Yes, just outside the city in Long Island.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, by the time this airs, we may be under a blanket of snow, so we'll just check that out.
Yep.
So, A Teen's Spirit, Changing the World Through Love and Kindness. What inspired this book in the first place?
Well, it basically all started with a granola bar. I know it sounds crazy, but my kids are now 6 and 8 years old. But when my youngest was 2 years old, I used to take them both into the city all the time because we live so close. And, you know, we'd go to all the parks in the city and have lunch, grab some dessert, and just walk around and have fun. And I would always bring snacks for them. And one time I had some surplus as I was getting back onto the train to come home, and there were, in Penn Station, obviously, you see a lot of homeless people. So, you know, I started handing them out to everyone who I saw. And then the next time I'd go in with my kids, I would bring some consciously for them. And then the next time I created bags, like where I got things from my house, like travel size toothpaste and anything I could find that I know they could use. And I would make sandwiches and put those in the bag. And it kind of all snowballed from there, where within the past year or two, I've been, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but all of my other free time is used for, you know, using Facebook to collect items from my neighbors in town and friends in town that have things that they don't need that I could use. So if, like, now I've been asking for blankets and coats, and I'll bring them either into the city on my own and hand them out, or I'll bring them to certain nonprofits where they distribute them. And I just realized that that it just makes me so happy to do this. Like, I love making sure that people have what they need, and, you know, having other people who don't need it get rid of it because they don't want it, and it makes them feel good also. And it's just, and then bringing it to these people face to face, and, you know, seeing how they react, and, you know, that I'm not even doing that much. I'm just doing a little bit, and the difference that it makes in someone's life, it's the power of, you know, love and kindness. So this book was written, basically it's for teenagers or preteens, and I basically wrote it to myself as a teenager. It's a book I wish that I had as a teenager, because I really didn't understand, you know, basic spirituality, and using that spirituality to, you know, go out into the world and help make the world a better place. So it really gives teens like a foundation of basic universal spiritual truths based on love and kindness. And it gives them ideas, inspiration for ways they can go out into the world at their age and, you know, use their gifts and their talents to help, you know, make the world a better place. Because I feel like that's our reason for being here, is to help people.
Well, I can't thank you enough for all that you're doing. That is just absolutely amazing. And could you please make sure, you said you were sharing this on social media, since you and I are people who live literally 15 minutes away,
Yes.
could you make sure that you share all those things with me, that I'm included with that, so I can share it amongst our viewers and audience, so that I can help get some more collections coming your way and channeled to the right place? I would love to share that with a larger audience.
Oh, that would be great.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh, I'm so appreciative of what you're doing. That's just absolutely amazing.
I love that you took it forward with your children. I mean, it's sort of like that pay it forward, and you're teaching the next generation, and it's going to be nothing to them. It's going to come be second nature, and what they're going to do and what our future is incredible.
Exactly.
During COVID, we'd normally go in on the train and do it, on hand, and they would see me doing it. But when COVID hit, once things calmed down a little bit, we started driving in, and they would come with me, obviously, because I couldn't leave them with anyone. So, and they're somewhat happy to do it. I always say we're gonna go get a treat, like we'll go to the vegan bakery and get you a donut, and they're happy to come for that reason. And I try to make it as quick as possible because I understand they are young, and but my daughter loves to help put together the bags, and sometimes my son will also. Like, they love sorting everything because I'll lay everything out, lay the bags out, and they put all the necessities on it. And, it's nice to have them help even that small amount. And I hope that someday, even if, their teen years don't go in that direction, maybe someday they have that to come back to.
That's
They will, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was going to ask, have you thought about partnering with some shelters, local shelters in your area, or maybe starting a nonprofit to help broaden the reach?
It's funny you say that. I was looking into starting a nonprofit, and I think that that's the ultimate goal. But there's some, and I guess I am initiating the process. I don't know if it's definitely going to happen because there are some, logistical things that I have to work through. But yeah, and I have recently started funneling a lot of the resources that I've collected to a certain nonprofit in the city who actually does the same thing that I kind of do, but in a more organized and structured nonprofit kind of way. So I'm happy because I can't get in as much as I would like to anymore because of, just getting on the train and all that. It's just a lot. So I don't want to hold on to all this stuff. I want to get it out there. It's, in the best way possible to everyone. But yeah, I definitely like the Bowery Mission, the Covenant House, all those places is where I bring a lot of stuff. So
also, maybe a thought here in Tucson, it's called Assistance League, and it's junior, it's for young teens, and they help charitably through the community. And it's also a way to continue their growth and education into a charitable life. And so kind of aligning with an organization that's already set and has those factors in place would make it easier for you to get out there.
Yeah, I just got a message from a church he saw one of the posts that I did in the my town's Facebook page, and a couple months ago he said, oh, well, maybe we'll do some sort of collection for you. And he didn't really follow up much after that, and I didn't think much of it. I wasn't going to be like, so are you? But I just got
oh, wow.
So I just got a message today. He said, I have a whole bunch of socks and snacks that we collected just for you, and I was just so surprised and delighted. And that's the thing, I think people in town are starting to know that when they have something they want to donate or that they don't need anymore, they could just give it to me and I will find the best place to give it to, So it's kind of like word of mouth, and hopefully it spreads enough where I can do as much as I can humanly handle.
Oh, it's like a rehoming drive, like here in
Yeah.
Texas. Yeah, people are like, if you don't want something, you could rehome it.
Yeah.
Also encourage people to, I donate because I used to travel a lot and I will again, but all those samples you get from hotels.
Yep.
People probably have bags and closets full of them, and that's a good way to cleanse.
I've reached out about toiletries, and a lot of women or men will be like, oh, my wife or my husband travels 200 days a year and I have all these bags of, and they're just sitting there, and that kills me. Let's do something about this. And they're so happy to do it because nobody wants stuff laying around either. So it's I'm helping them cleanse their house and in season. I'm also at the heart of this all. I'm an environmentalist. So, you know, like it's using our resources wisely.
Yep.
All
Beautiful.
encompassing with me. It kind of all came together into this one purpose. And I really just wanted kids to have like a book where it could just inspire them. You know, it's got like poems and music lyrics, activities, and then in between all of it, and it's all in color. So it like, you know, it's visually interesting. And it's got inspiring people, celebrities, and what certain celebrities are doing. Because a lot of celebrities have foundations that they actually, that's their passion. They're making all their money with their music, but then they're going and doing it, funneling it into the good. And I want kids to know that, like, they see all the fame on TV, but what's actually, you know, that probably makes them happy to a certain extent. But I think there's another component to what makes people happy in life, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's only so much fame is going to give you. You have to do something to give.
Exactly.
That's what makes us human.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And it's all.
Marci, have you worked with any other groups like, I don't know, scouts or groups that you can do collections with, you know, like young people groups? I'm just curious.
Well, it's funny you say that too. My daughter just started the Girl Scouts, and I just, before this call, I just emailed the troop leader because we got an email about how they're doing a food drive. And I said how this would be, even if we can't make the deadline for the food drive, I think we should work in some sort of community service component for the girls. And then we could donate it anywhere, you know, it doesn't have to be the Girl Scouts one. So yeah, like every opportunity I have to kind of like get the word out, and for young kids, I like to take advantage of it. And I also like to go into my kids' school. I used to more, now I Zoom in, but where like I'll teach the kids a class on something that is inspiring me at the moment, you know? Like last year I went in and to my son and daughter's class, and we made these peace flags, which are they're based on these Tibetan prayer flags. And there's 5 of them. You hang them on like a piece of twine, and they're fabric, and each child takes a piece of fabric and they draw their vision of peace and love on it. And the drawings that they come up with are so pretty. And then you glue them all to the string and you hang them as just in the classroom.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah. So the website that I have that you have up there is called the Kindcraft Project, which is a company I started at the beginning of this year, which I haven't really been able to fully do much with because of COVID. But it's where I would go into libraries and do library classes for children, and you know, do a story based on a certain topic like love or peace or kindness, and then do like a craft activity that reinforces that, you know, that attribute. And I had a couple of things lined up before COVID in the libraries and at like an Arbor Day festival to do the peace flags there. But you know, everything, it'll happen when it's time, you know.
Absolutely. This has made it very difficult for a lot of nonprofits and people to be able to do things. But I was driving around the city last night to see holiday lights and such with my kids. And yeah, the homeless problem is still a problem. So I'm so glad that there are people like you and all those groups you mentioned who are out there doing something.
Yeah.
Because we might be thinking that the whole world has become Zoom, but there's a lot of people who are still out there on the streets, not Zooming, they're living right there in the cold.
Yeah, and you know what? That's something that I'm good at. You know, like it uses a lot of my gifts and my talents, and it works for me. But everybody has a gift, and everybody can use their gift for good, because you could use your gift for bad. You know, like if you're a good singer, you could sing like songs with terrible lyrics and this and that, you know, that are not nice, or you can use it to inspire. So everybody, you know, this book is really to help kids identify their gifts and realize how special they are, and that it was given to them by God for them to go out in the world to use it for good. So I never knew that stuff growing up. I just had no idea.
Well, your kids will sure know about that stuff, that's for sure. And for any of our viewers out there, because we are in the middle of the holiday shopping season, if you have a teen, preteen, or I'm sure that, you know, with all that fabulous pictures and inspirational stories and celebrities and such, even a younger person in your life that you would like to inspire, please head over and grab A Teen's Spirit, Changing the World Through Love and Kindness. Now, if you have a grown-up in your life who's looking for something completely different, running with our eyes closed, I have to tell you, Mel, I love your description of this. I'm just going to give a little read of the first paragraph just to titillate our audience here. Samantha searches for her new identity after her 3 kids have left the nest and she's forced to re-examine exactly what she wants. Samantha heads to Italy to meet her husband, Michael, and soon discovers that he has secrets and an agenda of his own that could change their lives forever. Ooh, I can't grab a copy of that book fast enough. So, well,
Good.
yes. So tell us, what inspired your writing of this book?
Well, this is a story of a couple midlife. They've been married 25 years, facing each other now that their children are gone. So empty nest, midlife, the catalyst. I became an empty nester. I was a writer before I stayed home, and I raised my children full-time as a full-time stay-at-home mom. And their leaving presented some different challenges. And as I started to look at and speak with them actually about, their friends, they're like, they would say, why are so many of our friends' parents getting divorced? And everyone's life's changing. And so I started to really view those relationships and kind of watch the timing of it all. And then what I realized too is whether you have children or not, from 40 to 50, 50 to 60, these are benchmarks that you really go through changes. And who you were when you got married in your 20s is not who you are as you approach 50. So there's that. So at the end of the day, it is an evolution of a relationship, and through their eyes, and it's mainly through Samantha, and it's kind of a journal, and it's a series, standalone series, and this takes place in Italy, and she's really thinks she's got it all figured out, and then she realizes she doesn't have a clue. But she's open, and they both are open. So at this juncture, a lot of what is driving them and working through their differences is their physical relationship. And so it was really fun to explore that and those emotions, what we do to hang on to a relationship as we feel it slipping through our fingers, and whether we want to hold on to it or not. So there were a lot of questions, and part of it was, a lot of it was emotionally driven, my own questions of life and what's next. And then talking with people and interviewing men and women about what they were going through, and it's just rampant. And what was lovely was to see even this, I became an empty nester in 2013. And even only 7 years ago, these conversations were not at the forefront like they are now. I mean, empty nest, midlife, it was just like, it was kind of a thing, and you dealt with it and you went on. Well, it's a lot more than a thing. And I love the openness of the dialogue that is happening in our culture now, because as we do that, we can prepare for it. So had I known, if I knew then what I know now, my life would have been different, just in terms of how it wouldn't have been so blindsided. We could have, or my husband and I would have had different conversations going forward. And I think that these are important conversations to have. And I love that this book has been an impetus to ignite those conversations. And I love the feedback I get from readers. And again, not just parents, anyone going through midlife. And it's a vastly broad sweeping brush that it affects everyone. And my children and their friends who read it, it's like they would say, now we know what our parents were going through, because they became quite different, as we left the nest. So that's kind of how it all started.
Oh my gosh, I think that sounds fantastic. And I love that you didn't take this, I had a great story in my head and I, great characters and wrote fiction. No, it's like a researched, book that is designed to not only entertain, but to help people. And as someone married 25 years who does not have an empty nest, well, now there's COVID, so I don't know that I might not have an empty nest for 10 years now. Genesis is laughing because she knows. It's true.
My nest is full again. I laughed. My oldest son is 28, and he and his fiance came here from LA. He's in the film industry, and he's working remotely. They've been here since March, commuting back and forth. I'm like, you guys are killing my brand. I'm an empty nest advocate. But it's been fabulous. That's been fun too. That's been a different journey. Now, like having adult children back in the home, and I'm not carting them off here or there or teaching them lessons. We're friends. We're family. It's been an incredibly interesting growing experience. Luckily, we're close. We have a great relationship with everybody, but I know a lot of families are going through a lot, whether it's parents they're bringing in, so the nests are continuing to evolve.
I was going to ask you, are we going to have more books that, you have the empty nest book? How about when the nest gets full again?
Well, the series is Samantha's story. And so we really continue at this point to follow her, but again, they're standalone. Right. And book 2, this takes place in Italy. Book 2 is actually in Australia. We catch up with Samantha, and there's a bit of a cliffhanger in book 1. So it will give you a little insight into what to expect. She's approaching her 50th birthday in book 1, and in book 2 she is 50, and on to the next stage of her life, and that's been really fun to write also.
How many?
Look, that's coming out in 2021, and I'll be totally honest with you. I went back and dumped a great deal of storyline because I felt with everything that was going on in our world, it gave me an opportunity again to explore emotions and growth through a very different, unprecedented time in our world. And I thought that was really important to do, on top of figuring out who the heck you are at 50. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
How many books are in the series?
It's ongoing. This will be book 2. It's coming out. I don't have an end to it. I really conceived it originally as a trilogy, and I had a very defined book 1, book 2, book 3. But as book 1 got out, and when I set her little wings out into the world, and the feedback and the communication between readers and everyone was like, it's Samantha's story, and she actually is so much stronger than she thought she was. And that kind of came out in book 1. She was a mother first and foremost, and a wife. And as she really started to get back to who she was as an individual, that really resonated. And it's important. And it's an important journey for us women, as we wear so many hats, and we want, we question ourselves, and we have so many vulnerabilities, and addressing those and seeing someone really acknowledge them, and then perhaps be so much more than she gave herself credit for, is important, and that's what resonated. So it's really an ending. So we'll see how long it goes.
I love that. It's just perpetual, and you're absolutely right. There are so many stages that we go through as women, and as humans through our life. But I think women, especially, who have notoriously been the caretakers. So whether it's the children or the parents, or then the children again, and then the parents again, and then
what you just said is exactly right. That men go through it too, and I actually rewrote a lot of Michael's character after speaking with so many men. However, and my kids and my husband and I had family meeting, and when I was really struggling, and I explained to them, like, Dad's day to day, he loves you. Neither of us love you more or less. Not one thing about his day to day changed when you left, the last one, and everything about my life had changed. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's a really important distinction to be made. The love is there, the need is there, and how they deal with it is differently, and that's a whole other social issue. But we, as the moms and Marci, you're a stay-at-home mom, so that was my job. That was my full-time job, and all of a sudden I got fired, and I was like, now what? And it's an important thing that women deal with quite differently and more significantly, I think, if they are the primary at-home caregiver.
Absolutely. And even with incredibly involved fathers, I mean, I'm very, very fortunate that my husband was very involved with the children. But Mel, you're absolutely right. Even when the babies were born, he still went to work in the morning. He came home, maybe noisier at home, but really his life was the same. And mine
Right.
on a complete 180.
Yeah, so everything's up in the air and you just kind of have to see where the pieces fall. And that's where I think it's really important. And Marci, what you're doing, building your children's spirit, also gives them insight into discovering and developing their passions and who they are. And that's what I was a writer. I've been a writer all my life. I worked in radio and television, quite a bit different than writing fiction. But getting back to that passion was the most important step that I took. And, developing what's important to you and what matters to you leads you and opens so many doors. And there are so many silver linings to anything. And I'm finding that in 2020 as challenging as this year has been on every level. I turned 60 the first week of January, just to throw that out there. It's like, this is going to be my year. Oh, yes. I'm going to be in Australia writing my book. It's going to be fun. And then, no, sorry, get in your house and that's it. But there have been so many beautiful silver linings to that. Like one of them is having my kids here, having a full nest again and doing that differently and writing differently and collaborating and just, it's always looking for the positive and a way that you can make a difference, whatever you're given, wherever you are.
Absolutely. I did, one of my favorite lines that you said, though, was that your kids coming home is really messing with your brand. I thought that was great.
I know. I will tell you, one of my favorite quotes from my book is that, who are we now that life has had its way with us? And I love that can apply to anywhere across every spectrum. And I think that's where we are now as we approach the end of 2021. It's like, who are we now? Different maybe or the same than we were January this exact time last year. And it's like I've spent a lot of time reflecting on that, and those are important questions that we should ask ourselves on an everyday basis, because life has its way whether you want it or not. It gives you what it's going to give you.
That's very true. I think 2020 has taught all of us that life is
Yeah.
going to give you what it's going to give you. And
Yeah.
we're just going to be left, holding the bag, shall we say.
Yeah.
Well, someone whose book, I'm sure, and topic has morphed tremendously in 2020, Genesis writes of Chocolate Drop in Corporate America. In our daily lives, we are all faced with various trials, whether in the workplace or at home. However, when treated unfairly, it takes courage to stand and fight for what's right. No matter what your race, nationality, ethnicity, or background, you can rise to be the game changer. When you use the power of your voice, you shake the atmosphere and cause a domino effect because others will choose to either follow suit or stand in solidarity. So Chocolate Drop in Corporate America. Genesis, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie. So a little bit about my book. Started out young in corporate America. I work in the oil and gas sector, so I have 11 and a half years of experience in oil and gas. Started in high school, like doing a co-op program. Then, I was like, okay, maybe I'll stay, which it wasn't like my ultimate dream. Like my dream was to go off and follow my parents' plan, like go to medical school and all of that. So I tried it for a little bit working at the cancer center here in Houston. And then once a big fancy hospital was built, I got laid off and I was like, oh my gosh, like what is this layoff thing? So then a teacher friend of mine called and she's like, hey, I know you're, wanting to continue this class and get some credit hours. Like, would you mind like going over to this company for an interview? And I was like, okay, what's the position? And it was for an imaging clerk. And I was like, really? To scan papers all day? I'm like, okay, well, I'm in high school. It's $10 an hour. It's more than minimum wage. I was like, what the hey? And so I took it, and little did I know I was going to be, stuck in oil and gas. So I worked for a British company for 4.5 years, and it was really cool because I really got to know the family, and we really brought together, like it was like a family. Like, I went to work all day, like I got to know their son, I got to know his wife, and it was just like, okay, it wasn't really work, it was like a place where you could build relationships and build a bond. And it wasn't until like coming up to my 4th year where I had already worked my way up the corporate ladder there. And I was like, okay, what else can I do in this company? Because I went from an imaging clerk to a project coordinator to a HSC assistant to the interim HSC manager. Because at that point, once I got up to the interim HSC manager, we had already built the environmental safety program by ourselves. So me and my old boss at the time, she ended up leaving the company to go work for the good old boys, big old Fortune 500 company. And they're like, okay, well, you're the only one that really knew about the safety program, so we're just going to slot you into her role. And I was like, well, gee whiz. I was like, when she was here, I was here to assist her. Now I don't have an assistant. I can't run to like a fabrication shop and a regular, shop by myself. After all, you're dealing with a whole bunch of job safety analysis, you're dealing with drug and alcohol testing, you're dealing with guys who are going offshore and all of that. So then whenever I went to the CEO, I was like, do you think it would be feasible for me to have an assistant? He pretty much said no. So I was like, okay, now I feel like my season is up there. So I applied at the same company that, my old boss went to, and they're like, oh yeah, we know you have technical experience or whatnot, but do you mind taking this administrative assistant role? And I was like, sure, because I thought it was my way to get my foot in the door. Little did I know once I got in, they said, oh, once an admin, always an admin. And I was like, by whose definition? Because I didn't go to college to be an administrative assistant. I'm sorry. I respect what you're saying, but that is not my plan. And that's not my goal for me or what God has in store for me. So that's where the birth of my book started. It starts in 2013 with me being an administrative assistant. So I endured that role for 4.5 years. I ended up changing my whole entire degree from a psychology major, that was going to be my stepping stone, and then I was going to venture off into medical school, to doing a whole 360 and ended up getting my degree in supply chain and logistics technology with double minors, one in purchasing and one in organizational leadership and supervision. I didn't even know what that was at the time, but my first boss is like, okay, working for this oil and gas company, you're not going to go far with a psychology degree. So I suggest you go to your guidance counselor and figure out what degrees they offer at your campus, and then bring them to me and I'll help you pick. And I was like, okay. And he's like, oh, by the way, we'll pay your tuition. I was like, oh, sold. I was like, okay. So it was mechanical engineering and technology. I was like, oh man, I really don't want to do any extra math. And I was like, that's more of my brother's forte because he's an engineer. And I was like, you know what, let me just try the supply chain thing, because a lot of my psychology credits I could petition them to apply. So I was like, I don't want to throw money down the drain. And by that point, my parents had already, signed my brother's student loan. So they're like, we're not signing one for you. So you figure it out. I'm like, oh, okay. So then after 4.5 years, I finally graduated. So after 4.5 years being in that role, in December of 2016, I graduated, which was a nightmare from hell, because I got in a car wreck on my graduation day. My shoe broke. It was crazy. A cone got stuck underneath my car, so a police officer had to help me get the cone from underneath my car. And then walking across the stage to get my diploma, my heel broke. So I was like, it was one after another. And I was like, okay, God, there has to be a reason for this. So then after that, I moved into my first professional role, and that's where I really felt the racism and the systemic issues. And I was like, I never really thought about that growing up, because I'm from a diverse family. Both of my parents are non-Americans. My dad is from South America, so Curacao, and then my mom is from the West Indies, so St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And, my nieces, 2 of them are half Caucasian, 2 of them, the other 2 are half Indian. My other brother married a lady from Africa. So I feel like we're the United Nations over here. There's bits and pieces from all over, and you see family pictures. They're like, no one looks alike. You're all shades of color. And whenever at work, whenever I saw that I was the only one on my team, like I was the only one being treated differently, I was like, I don't care like what you look like or where you grow up. I think people are still people. Like the only thing that separates us is our outward appearance, because inside we all have a heart, we all have kidneys, we all have a gallbladder, and we all bleed red. So the only thing that makes us different is how we look on the outside, whether it's our hair color, our eye color, or the shades of our skin. But that shouldn't separate you whenever you are going through society or whenever you're in the workforce. So that's where I started to feel slighted in, the workforce, as well as, outside, because I started to see, when I started to go out with my niece and nephew who don't look African American, people in Texas start like, and it's a red state, and not that, politics really matter, but some people are very ignorant, especially where you live. And people started asking me in the grocery stores, hey, whose kids are those? Or are you responsible for them? And I was like, seriously? And then at work, whenever I saw that other people were accelerating faster than I was, but we had the same amount of experience, we had the same degree plan, I was like, you know what? I'm so sick of us talking about the issues that we have in our own ERGs, which are employee resource groups. Why are we separating, the African Americans, the Asians, the Hispanics, the Latinos, the Latinas, all of those in different groups? Why don't we come together? Because at the end of the day, we are all minorities. And I feel like if we all have similar issues, we should talk about them collectively and not just with those who look like us, because we're not really helping one another. Like we're helping when we come together. And I was like, you know what? I just got so tired of it. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put my pen to the paper. And what really, shook this book was the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And the reason why I say that was, it was in a meeting that we had with the vice president, where he went around the room and he called on every African American person. There was about, sorry, my husband's a chef, so he's at work.
Your husband's a chef?
Yes.
Gosh.
No, I'm hungry now. Thanks for saying that.
So he called in each person in the room, and then he finally got to me, and I was like, I really didn't want to speak up. But at that point, I felt like I had nothing to lose. So he's like, would you mind sharing your experience? And I was like, okay, work-wise or, personal? So he's like, both. So I shared one about my niece and nephew, Caleb and Callie, who are half Caucasian. And I told them about the story, how I got stopped in the grocery store, Kroger's to be exact, and people were asking me whose kids those were and etc. like that. And he's like, oh wow. Then I told him another story where me and my husband were driving out of town to go visit his mother in the Dallas area, and the cop pulled us over. And he didn't really have a valid reason for pulling us over. But once he looked me and my husband up in the system, and he found out that I work for this big brand, Fortune 500 oil and gas company, and my husband was a chef at this, executive senior living place, he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to let you guys go with a warning. I'm like, seriously? Then we switched gears into the professional side, and I started talking about how in 2013 I started as an administrative assistant. Fast forwarding seven years later to 2020, I'm still being paid as an administrative assistant, although now I'm a compliance coordinator. And I kid you not, a week after that discussion with the VP, I got a 20% salary increase. And I was like, if you really wanted to make things right, you should have went and back paid me for, the 3 years that I've been doing this role by 20%. But I said, you know what, God, like, no harm, no loss. I'm thankful for the 20% increase, especially during the pandemic where a lot of people were losing their jobs. And then I continued on a little bit more. I'm still with this particular company, but just recently, after losing my dad the day before Thanksgiving, my dad passed away. Then a week later, I got the news, oh, we're going to have to lay you off. And I'm like, seriously? So all of the two instances about the 20% increase, the layoffs, those aren't in the book because, that just happened. But I really tell people, like, whenever you go through life, there's a reason for the season. So you really have to understand why you're going through a particular season in your life. And you just take the good and the bad and see how you could apply it to your life to become a better person and grow. Because if we never take the injustices that we've been faced and flip it for our good and to help those in society who may be going through similar things, where are we going to be? And I just feel like we're only regressing as society instead of moving forward. So it takes someone who has been through a certain situation in life to really pen it out and really talk about it, to help those who may still be in bondage, whether that's mentally, physically, or emotionally. And I just encourage people, like, so many times we go through life with, as a child as well as an adult, people always ask us, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? But they never take time to even ask you, who do you want to be when you grow up? And I think the who is more important than the what, because the who, that is encompassed with your morals, your values, your characteristics, and your whole holistic approach that you have on life. Whereas the what, anyone could just be a lawyer, a doctor, a police officer. And I feel like that's a way for people to keep you in confinement and keep you under the labels and under the radar, because it never really takes you as far as you want to go, because you're then trying to fit a mold that someone has placed on you. And so I just, but this book, I just encourage people to be fearless and, rise above the limitations and the barriers that other people place on you, no matter if you're a chocolate drop, if you're a vanilla drop, or whatever you call yourself. And I know the title of the book does sound controversial, but I wanted something fun, but I also wanted to catch someone's attention to say, okay, what is chocolate drop in corporate America? Because I hear the name, but then the cover shows me people from all nationalities and all career backgrounds. And there's a world in the back of the cover. And I did that intentionally because I wanted everyone, no matter what industry you're in, to know that, everyone faces systemic issues and everyone has been slighted one way or another. And I wanted people to know that, we just have to let go of the unconscious biases and really get to know a person for who they are and not what people say about them. And then the world represents that these issues don't just happen in America, but they happen worldwide. But it takes, us three women talking about our stories and our journeys to bring awareness to where we are in present day, and pave a foundation for those who are coming, not only besides, but those coming behind us and future generations to come. Because even though whenever we pass on, these books that each one of us has written on this show will be a legacy for the next person that comes along to read them.
Absolutely. You know what I love that you just said, and it's not just for young people, what you want to be when you grow up or who you want to be. All three of you ladies are really so much about who we are and who we choose to be. And I love that you are empowering people to realize that that is really a decision. Who do you want to be? And don't just take what is handed to you, as you said, Genesis. Don't just, accept this is the way it is, but walk into those footsteps of who you want to be. And both Mel and Marci are advocates in different ways for different stages, like you were talking about, seasons of life and different things that happen. But I am so appreciative of you and your voice speaking out for people and your testimony, so that other people can hear what you've gone through and say, wow, she was there and look where she's come, and I can be there too. And there's ups and there's downs. I mean, boy, the stuff that's not in the book that has happened this year, I think there's going to be a volume 2, but what an incredible testimony to other people, and to be able to share your path and how other people can read that and say, okay, like, I've never met her, but I feel like she's a friend now, like a mentor who's gone forward, and I can follow those footsteps. Wow. That's just a wow. Thank you so much. That first teacher, as a teacher myself, does she know what a big, I don't know if it was a she or a he, but that first teacher who kind of steered you from one place to another, have you ever told her what an impact she made on your life? Does she know?
I have been trying to look her up on LinkedIn or Facebook so I can get in touch with her. Her name is Beverly Horner, so maybe this, show will
Right.
cross her path
Yeah.
someday. And she was my BCIS teacher in high school, so Business Computer Information Systems. And she was just wonderful because had it not been for her, like, where would I be? So it's just amazing the people that you meet along your journey and the impact that they have on you, whether it's small or big.
That's fabulous. Well, I do hope that Beverly heard this. Um, I've been in education my whole life, and I'm married to a teacher. And I have to tell you, when I get a call from a student from years back, and they're like, you said this one thing, I love that. So I hope Beverly hears us here today. We were talking about, Marci and starting with the very, very young and getting people to really, really know who they were. And then Mel, when you're in different periods of life and you have to kind of reinvent yourself, and there's Genesis who's plowing down the barriers in her life. And I love that from all three of you. So 3 completely different types of books and 3 completely different writing experiences, which is, I'm so thrilled for our writers out there to hear. Any tips from the 3 of you on people who are writing, whether they are writing a personal story like Genesis, a more fictional story, but based on personal like Mel, or an inspirational like Marci? How about what can our writers out there do to get started?
I would.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Dennis.
go. Oh, sorry. You could go, Marci.
Okay, I'll go quick. I was just gonna say that my book, I wasn't originally gonna write a book. It just kind of happened, and I wrote a bunch of things that inspired me on a piece of paper and put it right in front of where I look in front of me, like on the couch, like most of the day, like my vision sight. And every day I would add to it things that I realized that I loved, and they were all different types of things, whether it was yoga or vegan cooking and baking or helping the homeless. Like I just wrote all these things down, and then I wrote a letter to the editor once, and it was about how we should care more about not just our own family and friends, but people outside our own circle. And that became the base of the book. And then all the other inspirational ideas that I had in front of me all day all became like different chapters almost, or different parts of the book, and it all kind of came together within a few months. So it's not like you just have to, I guess you just put your passion into it, and then it comes through in the end.
Well, I think too that for anyone out there who's in the process of already in the throes of it or considering, as you mentioned earlier, Stephanie, everyone has a story and maybe wanting to tell it, do that. And whether it's taking notes and just read, if you're going to write fiction, I find, reading every type of genre helps just, to find your voice. And at the end of the day, that's what writing your story is. It's whatever the base of your story is, you're sharing your voice. So find your voice and how you're most comfortable sharing that voice, and then just do it. And there's so many more avenues now to get your book out there, to get published, to get your voice heard, that I always encourage, if you have just the tiniest seed planted, water it, grow it, take care of it, and write it, because we need more beautiful stories out there.
Absolutely. Genesis, how did you get started with yours?
So my book was actually birthed out of frustration, like just saying enough is enough. But my tip to those who are struggling with, their writing journey is my triple ones, which are, you could either write a paragraph a day, write a page a day, or write a chapter a day, whichever one is more attainable to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on pen and paper. You could write it on your phone through the notes app or your laptop. And what I didn't share earlier is I wrote my entire book on my cell phone, because at the time I did not have a laptop. So I have a notes app, and whenever ideas just popped into my head, like my phone is always in my hand. So I just, take it to my typing, and little did I know, 3 sentences that came out of frustration, turned into a full-blown book. So anything is possible. So stop making the excuses and get to writing, because someone needs to hear your story.
Fantastic. Now, for our shoppers out there, because it is prime shopping season right now, thank goodness for online shopping so that people can buy your books. Please tell us about who would be a good fit for your book. So if I'm looking through my gift list right now, I'm saying I need something. And here's a little fun for this question. If I was going to buy your book and I was going to couple it with some other object, like a gift basket. So who should be getting your book, and what else should I put in the gift basket?
Love that.
Okay, Mel, do you have any ideas about?
I do. Well, I do. So gift basket.
Remind everybody. Okay, so running with our eyes closed. Who should I be buying this for, and what?
So it's definitely an adult book, and men or women, any age over 18, please. And as far as if empty nesters, if you have somebody about to send their kids off to college, it would be a fun, great read, or someone who just did, and or anyone facing these midlife challenges. And as far as pairing it with something, how fun, because it does take place in Italy. A lovely gift basket would be some beautiful red Italian wine and maybe some olive oil and a nice baguette, and off you go. Some cheese, that would be great.
Fantastic. Well, you just took care of my sister-in-law that you just described to a T. So now I know what she's getting. Absolutely. Genesis, who should be getting your book, and what is going to go in the gift basket with that?
So anyone that is in the workforce, whether it's corporate America or, the medical field, or, it's open to all industries. I think someone who is super passionate about inclusion and diversity would benefit from this book, and someone who may be stuck in the fear zone. And when I say fear, just think about it as false evidence appearing real, or anyone who has just felt like, they reached that top of the mountain where enough is enough and they're not sure where to go next. This book would apply for them. And I would definitely pair it with a nice journal, because I think it's important as readers are reading that they take time to reflect on what they read, as well as, have a glass of wine, maybe a nice wine like Mel says, because, just to
wine makes everything better. Sorry.
I love that you were pairing yours with a journal, because especially since, as you described your book, it was born out of frustration. And I think pairing your book with a journal is a fabulous, and wine. Wine makes everything better.
So true.
Now, Marci might think something differently for her book. So, Marci, who is getting your book, and what are we pairing it with in the gift basket?
This book would definitely be great for any preteen or teenager. If they have any sort of spiritual inclination, I think it would be great. But then also, I think it's good for kids that have no idea about this, because I think it can open their eyes to like a different way of living. So it could be for any teenager at any stage of where they're at. And Genesis, that's such a great idea. I think actually all three of us, our books could use a journal alongside as we're reading. And then I was just thinking like a yoga mat for mine, because it's such an accessible activity, and I think it's a great way to start your day. And I think it's important that we take care of ourselves first, because if we don't feel good physically, I think all the rest, it doesn't work. It doesn't work out as easy. So, and I think yoga is good because it combines a little bit of meditation with, connecting your mind and your body together. And I just think, moving and activity and, reflecting on ourselves is important. So
That's
nice yoga mat.
Well, you have just handled our shopping for all of our viewers. I can't thank you enough for being here, and I'm going to ask you please to keep in touch. I know that Mel has got a new book coming out in 2021. So Mel, please send along the information and join us back here on the
I love that. Thank you.
You have your new book. I have a feeling that Genesis is going to have another book in her because the story continues on. And Marci, please send and share with me any information as to where here in New York we can channel some of our unused, unloved things that can be given a new home and a new life someplace else. I would really, really appreciate that.
Wow.
The three of you have been phenomenal and such an inspiration to our viewers out there in their lives, but also to our writers out there in their work. So thank you so much for joining us between.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well. Please visit BetweenTheCoversTV.com. By the way, at BetweenTheCoversTV.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.